All right, welcome back to another edition of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Inferna, and I have a very special guest tonight that it's like it's at least 10 years in the making. Former SUNY Brockport All-American thrower. Now he takes care of us on the streets downstate in New York. Dominic Gonzalez, how are you, man?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I can't believe, like we were just saying, we haven't seen each other since the Gold's Gym days of 2013 in Webster.
That's right. The ghost of Christmas past has come back. So.
It is the ghost of Christmas past. That's right. But when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, I was telling my kids, because our middle son's named Dominic too, and I was like, I'm going to talk to somebody named Dominic, and he's like, oh, he spells his name like me, and I was like, no, his is a little different. He was thinking about it, and he's like, is it Dominic? And I was like, no, why don't you try again? And he's like, Dominicc. I was like, oh, dude, you're so close. He goes, he spells his name with a K. He goes, it's not the same sound. And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, different people have different, letters at the end of their name or whatever. But
so it's funny, so like I'm named after my grandfather. So
right.
My grandfather's from Cuba, immigrant, first generation. A lot of people know the story, but his name is Domingo, and the American version of Domingo is Dominic. My father, wanted to honor my grandfather, which is, was just a fantastic. I can never, not, it's amazing, but it's he wanted to make it more American.
Right.
It's the way it was. So
right,
but. I have a dispatcher at town of Woodbury where I work, and his name is Dominic, but he's Italian, so it's Domenic. I believe is an IC at the end, but there's an E in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's interesting because my parents too are immigrants from Sicily, and my dad's dad was Calogero. So
Okay.
Back in the early '80s, my mom was like, "No, we're not gonna call you Calogero," because she was more worried about, my gosh, what are they going to call him in school? Is he going to be able to learn how to
Listen, it would be like Bronx Tale.
Yeah, seriously. I know, right? Well, like our oldest is Joseph. He's named after my dad.
Right.
And my dad's like, no, you got to name him Giuseppe. Like, Dad, listen, like Giuseppe's a little bit more difficult. He's like, he kind of relented a little bit, but it's just like an old school mentality, I think.
It is, and it's funny you laugh. It's like, looking at it now, I mean, I'm in 33.
Right.
When I was like 15, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to be named, Giuseppe. But now when I'm, 33, I'm like, that's awesome. Maybe,
Right. Well, yeah, because when I was a kid, we would, I'd bring like weird things to school for lunch.
Yeah.
And I got picked on about it. But now you're right. Reflecting back, it's like, wow, that was like really cool that,
right.
My parents, took care of us like that. And we're trying to do the same thing. So we talk Italian. Well, I talk Italian to our kids. They've never spoken anything, but they understand and they can follow direction. So it's pretty cool that like, they're kind of still like involved with, the culture. But like my grandparents raised me, so that's all they spoke back then was Italian. So I didn't have a chance. Like that was it.
We, very similar. My parents, they were hardworking people. We grew up, we were middle class, lower middle class, working people. My dad worked 3 jobs. He was going to school, teaching. As before, he was an administrator. He was, coaching and, doing what he can to make what he do. My mom was the same way, working long hours. So my parents, or my grandparents, excuse me, are the ones that kind of really gave me that, home mentality and raised me, and it's the way it was. They spoke Spanish at home. My grandmother exclusively spoke Spanish.
Sure.
My grandfather, he spoke English, but it was like that Spanglish kind of, he had to figure it out. But it's a different culture. Now I have a 2-year-old, and we don't speak Spanish in my house. My wife is not Spanish. She's European, Scottish, German descent, and so there's no Spanish coming from that end. But my mother still speaks Spanish, and so it's still there. We're not trying to lose it. We're trying to remember our culture, but it's a different world than it was back. I'm born in 87, so you figure mid 90s to now, things are completely different. So,
but do you think? Because I think about it sometimes, like the way I grew up, I was the first person in my family to go to college. And that was like a non-negotiable. My dad worked on an assembly line for 25 years. So that was not what he wanted for me. And I reflect now, like all the school that I've acquired and all these things that because we kind of grew up similar. Do you think that had, how much of an impact do you think that had on your athletic career as you were kind of like growing up through middle school, high school, and the college?
Oh, man. So if you would ask me this question 10 years ago, I would give you a completely different answer. So 10 years ago, just graduating college, I was like, oh, this is what I needed. Go to school, get an education, get your degree, go to, that's how you're going to get college scholarship. That's how you compete in track and field or whatever you want to do. And now that I'm not even in a field that I even went to school for. I went to school for, phys ed, exercise science, law enforcement, totally different.
Right.
I think I personally would have done better not going to college right away. And I say that after everything that I've learned in my life, especially the past 5 years. I definitely was not mentally, I don't want to say I thought I was ready for college, not just saying up for schooling, but being away from home, the responsibility, the temptation, I think I could have done better, taking some time and coming in older, be more mature. That's the word I'm looking for. Is, back when I was 18, 19, I was a savage. You were the typical freshman year, having fun. Listen, I went to class. I'll say I went to class, but did I learn anything? No. Would I have done better? Maybe not going in right away. I could say that now, looking back.
Sure.
I probably would have done better. I would have matured better. But it did play a huge role. I mean, that's when my father was like, you got to go to college, got to go to college, got to go to college. He's an administrator. At the time, he was still an administrator. He was an assistant principal at the time. My brother had gone to school. He's a teacher. My sister had gone to school. She became a teacher. So it's just a long list of, all right, go to school, get a job, get a good job, and go on from there. And then there's me, who was like, oh, I'm just going to throw this metal ball, and then school will come afterwards. So I was definitely a athlete student more than I was a student athlete. Let's just put it that way.
I didn't even, I'm glad you said that you went to class. I didn't really go to class too often at all. I'm a little bit older than you, so we never competed against each other while I was an athlete.
Correct.
But I think, for a semester, maybe if I went to like 40% of my classes, maybe 50, like that was a good semester. And the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I intercepted a letter at home saying, if you don't get your act together, you're not going to be able to come back. And I don't know if my parents ever really found out. I don't think mom or dad are ever going to watch or listen to this, but I don't know if they ever found out, but that was kind of like a wake up call. My brother and I, he was a senior in high school that summer. So we would be coming home from going out, and my dad would be leaving for work. And it was like, dad's going to work at 3:00 in the morning to go, gosh, I'm going to get teary-eyed. I'm thinking about it. He's going to go push a button for 16 hours so I can go mess around at Fredonia and, try and become this thrower that there was no chance that it was going to happen.
Man, I feel like I'm talking to a mirror.
So it took two of those letters to come home that I finally realized, okay, by then, my undergrad GPA was shot. And fortunately, Fredonia, if you graduated, they let you into their grad program. So you didn't have to take GREs and anything. And I went to school to be a teacher. So it was really safe. And I fell into a teaching position right when I graduated. And I guess the rest is history. But it took me a while to okay, you know what? This throwing thing, it's cool in college, but it's for me anyway, it wasn't going to go anyplace. You, on the other hand, I watched you throw some bombs back in the day.
Back in the day. So I feel the same. So I had my wake up call at school, at least, was sophomore year, nationals, Wisconsin. My parents had flown out and I completely shit the bed. I remember that competition and it was bad. I think I had one mark throw. It wasn't even the B standard. I think it was 47 meters. It was bad. It was just a bad overall. And then my father kind of pulled me aside. He's like, if you want to be serious in track and if you want to be serious in general, you need to just shape up. I know my sophomore year was an absolute booze fest. I'll completely admit, my parents, they know now, as I've admitted everything, but that whole fall semester, I had to retake every single course because I bombed out of them. It was just awful.
Right.
I barely trained. Like, when I say I barely trained, like, I showed up to the gym and maybe did some biceps,
Sure.
if I was sober enough to go. I mean, that was kind of what it was. And that, I realized, like, all right, you made it to nationals as a sophomore. You were in middle of the pack as a nobody, and you went there and you just not only embarrassed yourself, but embarrassed my team and my family. Show me, think about it. My parents, we didn't have oodles of cash to take a weekend flight to middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. And this is what I represent. This is what I brought to the table.
Right.
And that was a wake. And that's why my junior and senior year, where I really accelerated in my competition. I really took my training into focus and everything else. But even then, looking back now, I could have done more. I could have done more. I could have done things a little differently. But it was still that was my turning point.
Right. Well, even like you posted a video the other day on your Instagram where you're carrying these logs and stuff like that, and I showed my kids, and they're like, "Oh, Daddy, you should be able to, you should do stuff like that, right?" Dominic's like, you're as big as he is. He's just because he's younger, Daddy. And I'm like, yeah, I think I could, but it's interesting because pre-kids, I felt like I was training hard. Like I thought that like I was working hard and trying to balance all this stuff. When in reality, it was like I wish I could go back. Like sometimes I wake up and I'm like, God damn, if I could be 25 for one more year, right, and try and do it over again. But I feel like I get more accomplished now with 3 little guys running around, and I think it's just different. I think like who has time to warm up, right? Like I carry them up and right, like I carry them up and down the driveway, like that's the warm up, or I pull them, they all sit on a slide and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting how things like that perspective, changes, because mine are a little older. I have a 6, a 4, and a 2-year-old. So you'll get there if there's more. But yeah, I think like the kids that I've coached the last couple of years at NAS, like I think they take it for granted sometimes. Like, oh, coach, classes are hard. Oh, this is hard. Like whatever. I'm like, what? Like you're 18 or 19. Like this is the time. Like I can't even share half the stories of the stuff that we used to do when we were 18 or 19. Like I don't know if I get nobody got fired or something, but it's like it's different. It's changed.
It is. I couldn't agree anymore. I'm 33. I'll be 33 in May. So we're slightly age different, not terribly too much different. But you're right. If I can go back to what I know, and listen, it's not like I furthered my education and training. Once I graduated school, I did a little bit, like you said, I did the Gold Gym thing. I did the training. I coached Geneseo. I did all that stuff. We could touch on that, a little bit later on. But I stopped all that formal education for training, and I started to kind of more pay attention to what I wanted to do or what I needed to do. So, I guess we'll just do the quick bio thing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I went through, obviously graduated SUNY Brockport, was a 2-time college All-American, SUNYAC champion in the discus, or not, excuse me, take that back. I lied. The weight throw and in the hammer throw, I've placed in the discus throw, state, SUNYAC, you name it. I competed in it, and I had a very good career. I was coached by a great coach, and Coach Skolsky. He's still at SUNY Brockport, and then I had an excellent career. And I'm sure Ed will probably say he wish we could have done a little bit more, and I know I could have done a little bit more. But post college, post the All-American, post all that stuff, I stopped throwing, which I guess that's another topic down there. But I started competing in powerlifting. Did well in that too. Competed I totaled 17-15 raw. Right now, off the top of my head, I can't remember what I totaled equipped, but I did equipped powerlifting, raw powerlifting, WMPF. I mean, you name the competitions, the USAPL. I did them all before the whole everyone and their mothers decided to do powerlifting out of nowhere. But and what I know now, I would say at 33, I'm 205 pounds, so I'm down where I was. I competed 275, so people give an idea. It's a 70-pound difference. It's not so much what's on the bar anymore for me. It's more about what I can do. And now, especially since I'm in law enforcement, it's more along less of a skill set. It's me knowing now what I have to do for me to come home every day. And I don't work in the meanest of streets. I'll openly admit that. I'm not in, the boogie down Bronx. I'm not in the crazy, Hell's Kitchen, anything like that. But it's still a crazy world out there. And, I'm sure everyone has seen the videos, everything else. But I tell my wife every day, I make sure that when I leave home, I come home the same way. And it's something I take extremely serious. And by me, I know, ask any of my people that I've worked with or I currently work with, I'm going to not quit. That's just my mentality. It's the way I've always been. And so if we're ever in that situation where it's going to be that, hey, you're either going to make it, you're not going to make it. Right. I'm making sure that it's not going to be because I'm tired or because I'm sore. It ain't going to happen. Right. And that's more my training now. So now with this whole Corona thing, so me and my brother had built a gym in his basement. And when we built the gym, like we built a gym, we went to gym auctions. And I'm sure if you go back in my Instagram videos, you see, all the equipment, the weights, I think I have over 1,000 pounds just in 45, just to give you an idea of what we had at the gym there. But I'm still working. I'm that, essential personnel. I don't want to expose. My brother's got 2 young kids, a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old. So, or 11, age is 11 now, excuse me. So I don't want to get them sick. So we recently purchased a home that has a 30 by 40 pole barn. Now the pole barn, we bought one of the reasons why we love the house is the pole barn is one of them for me, but it gives me a space that I can go and train. Now the gym ideally is going to move into that. It's far from ready. There's leaks. I joke around. I have a cheering section of chipmunks that watch me work out because I got holes in the gym. But that's why when you see all the video of me training with the log, I don't have all the equipment over here. I got an old York barbell, like 315 worth of plates, a couple of 25s, 10. So I got to make do with what I got. I have a wood burning stove, so we have some log rounds. I was like, all right, let me pick this thing up. Like it's heavy. I don't know how heavy it is, but it's good. It's enough for me to pick up and carry. I'm just going to carry this. So I'll just carry it back and forth and then do some kettlebell snatches, rest 60 seconds and just do it again until I feel like I'm done. So that was that video there, but that's kind of my training now is not so much that it's structured, but it's more along like what I feel like doing. Right. There is a method to the madness. It's just, it's not a well planned out. I couldn't write it down on paper for you, but I know kind of what I'm going to do. So
now, do you miss those days? Because I remember, I graduated and I thought I was going to go to the 2008 Olympic trials, and that went terribly wrong. But I think, looking back, because you, 17, 15, like that was, I don't know if that was elite total back then, because that was
back then it was.
Back then it was, right? Back then. So do you ever think back, like, man, if I would have pushed a little harder, or because I would love to get down to 205. Like my kids joke we have bunk beds, so I can't get on the top bunk because it's horrible. I know I'm so fat. The top bunk, the weight is 300 pounds. So our 6-year-old's about 70, 75 pounds in a given day. So he's like, Daddy, I know you can't get up there with me. He's like, we weigh too much. So the middle guy is like, well, Daddy, I only weigh 45. So you only have, you have like 20 pounds to go. So every night he's like, okay, is it your turn? Yeah. Can you come up? Can you come up? Can you come up? I'm like, dude, it doesn't work like that. But, do you miss it, or is there anything about it that you're like, I could have tried to hit 18, or I could have pushed a little harder?
So you and me both know what it is. It's a sick mindset that we as competitors have. And some people get it and some people don't get it. There's the people that I'm sure listen to the podcast get it, that it's that sacrifice, that what does it take to get that extra meter, 100 pounds, 5 pounds, 2.5, whatever it is. Right. And then there's people like my wife, for instance, who she understands it now because I've kind of explained it to her. But at first she's like, what do you, I remember we were just dating at the time. And this is when I was dabbling in strongman.
Right.
And I competed at Matt Mills Gym, Lightning Fitness in Rhode Island, Connecticut, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a partner strongman with this girl that I knew. And it was like the first weekend I just started talking to my wife. We were just dating. And she's like, "You're doing what again?"
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just doing the strongman competition. Like what you saw on TV, like carrying like refrigerators and stuff." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Why?" And she didn't get it. You know,
Right.
she understands it more now because she's married to me and she gets it. But you're right. What I would have done to do that little more. So we'll go back to my maturity, how I feel like I've matured over the past 5 years, 10 years. 10 years ago, I would have done anything to get 5 pounds, you know, clawed, scratched, whatever you got to do to get it. And that sacrificed my health. So what I mean by that is I ballooned up. The 293 pounds is my heaviest. When I hit that 1715, I was 293 and I cut weight to make 275 just to get me.
Right.
That's, and people's like, "Oh, how did you lose?" Oh, you know, it's, you know, water cycling, carbs. It wasn't fun, you know, but that's what I had to do. I hit 1715 at 275. That was RPS Christmas Carnage 2013, I think, 14. That's when Gene was still alive. I think that meet I squatted 640, benched 405, and I think I pulled 660, something like that, or whatever the numbers. It's around there to get 715. But no, I definitely wanted more. But what made me realize, there's two major things that made me realize that I need to make a change was my oldest nephew. They just bought a trampoline and he's like, "Uncle Dom, jump with me." I made it maybe 30 seconds and I thought I was gonna have a heart attack.
Sure.
And I'm like, "Oh God," I was like, "I'm in shape. This is, how hard can this really be? It's just jumping in the trampoline." And he was like upset. He's like, "Uncle Dom, you can't jump on a trampoline." Like, he didn't understand. He's young, maybe like 3, 4 at the time. He didn't get it.
Right.
And then, so you might know this because you know, you maybe not, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but when you go to certain stores, they don't carry pants over a size 40. When you get to over size 40, it's the big and tall section. So I'm like, God, this is a problem. And that's when I made the change. And I didn't really change too much because I still competed. I still competed. That's when I went to, you know, USAPL, and I went to WMPF, and I competed down to 242 and 220. And then that's when I got into law enforcement. And that's when I changed my training to realize that no one cares what's on the bar. You know, like, no one cares that I benched 405 or squatted 640. Like, sure, it sounds good, but realistically, who cares? You know, I could walk around, unless I was Ronnie Coleman, no one could care that this cop can do a 640 squat. Who cares? You know, you're just a cop on, you know, you're just a guy in the car. So now I'm like, well, what do I have to do? And that's where my training is now. So where I still do, if I were to say, if I do any type of old school training, I would say I still follow 5-3-1 very loosely. And what I mean by very loosely, as in like, maybe I do the percentages and maybe I fall back to it. But it's more along the lines of, it's a 3-day wave where I do old school upper body pull, lower body push, you know, reverse. So then you have upper body push, lower body pull, and then there's what I call conditioning / strongman day, and just rotate. I don't know what the weights I'm going to do. Like, I know, like, all right, like today, I know I'm going to squat. So then I got, so lower body push, upper body pull. So I'm going to squat and just a bent over rows. All right, what weights am I going to do? Like, well, my legs were a little sore from the other day, so I'm just going to do some high rep squats, and then I'll just make, and that's kind of how I'm going around and how I could continue to train. I do that now. You know, I say consistently, I'm probably working out or doing something physically active 6 out of 7 days a week, where 5 years ago, I hit the gym 4 days a week, and it took me 4 days to recover from the squat day I just had, you know? So it's just a different way of doing things, but it's still, I still have the bug. I still have it's that itch that you can never, you know what, again, like I said, it's either you know it or you get it, you don't get it. And that's how I still have it. And that's my itch now, is getting in every day, making it fit, making it work, and just getting after it. That's just it.
So when you transitioned to law enforcement, was there, so I mean, I'm not familiar with it. So was there like a conditioning test? Like what, did you wake up one morning and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go to the academy? Like how did it work for you when you did
So
that?
I had to go to the academy. So I took you have to take a written exam,
Mhm.
then you qualify, you get a certain score in the written exam, and after
Mhm.
written exam, excuse me, you get a letter that
Mhm.
you qualify for the PT test.
Right.
And the PT test is easy. I mean, it's bare bones, push-ups, sit-ups, mile and a half run. And there's a standard. And the standard doesn't seem hard. So the push-ups, you have to do 29 push-ups. Not very hard. The sit-ups, where
Mhm.
majority of people fail, is
Sure.
depending on your age, you have to do a certain amount of sit-ups in 60 seconds.
Mhm.
So you think, I'm trying to remember what I had to do. I want to say it was 38 sit-ups in 60 seconds, which doesn't sound hard, but when
Right.
you're 270 pounds, not
Sure.
very easy. Seeing the fact that, it takes like a second to do one. You figure by the time you go down and
Right.
up, your knees, your elbows all the way past your knees,
Mhm.
it takes just time to do it. So even if you're perfect at 1 second
Mhm.
per rep, it's 38 seconds. If
Right.
you mess up, it's a small window. So
Right.
you being out of shape or heavier
Mhm.
doesn't help. So I started, my first PT test I took was at City of Rochester, and
Mhm.
I failed it,
Oh, I didn't
and I
know
was
that.
in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was
Yeah.
in.
I
That
didn't know that.
was.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed because I was like, because I was training at Gold. It's like, oh,
Right.
look at me. I'm in shape. I'm this. I'm the guy. I'm the man. And I
Right.
failed it. And I saw the guys are in there with me. I'm like, I can smoke these guys. These guys are weak. Bean
Right.
poles.
Right.
But I realized, I'm like, they're in shape to do the task at hand. That's like you going to throw
Right.
and be like, all right, you're going to throw a hammer today, but you've never touched a hammer in your life. Go throw 50 meters.
Right.
It ain't going to
Right.
happen.
That doesn't happen. Like, yeah.
So, and that's what rung the bell for me. I
Mhm.
realized I'm not fulfilling what is needed to be done. So
Mhm.
I decided to make it a personal challenge
Mhm.
that I'm going to not only excel at the physical, which I did, I flying colors past the physical,
Mhm.
but if I go to the academy's hard enough as it is, where it's a mental test more than it is, yeah, you have to learn stuff and there's a PT aspect. It's a mental test. If you've never had a group of people in your face screaming at you, yeah, like, I'm sure you've seen the boot camp videos of the
Right.
military. It's not that
Mhm.
intense, but
Right.
you get the idea.
Mhm.
That's a mental test.
Mhm.
So if I can make a factor easy, knowing that I can take any physical challenge and making sure that I can not make that my fault, then the rest is going to be easy.
Right.
And that's what I did. I mean, I'm sure Coach Escolsi will tell you, I always felt like I was very coachable,
Mhm.
and I was very, I took instructions, and I was like the quote unquote soldier athlete, where tell me what to do, what do you want me to do it, and I'm going to do it,
Right.
and that's always my mentality I've always had. Give me a task and I will do it. So, all right, sure. You want me to yell at me and do it? Like, all right, you're gonna yell at me. I know it's just another day of the job, but you want me to do all these physical tasks. I can control that. I can control, and that was my focus for the training for
Mhm.
law enforcement. And it was tough at the time, especially I was just recently married. Me and my wife were married for a year, and when I went into the academy, my wife was 8 months pregnant. I had my daughter in the academy, and I cannot thank my wife enough because she was so supportive. I could not imagine what it would be like to not have her in my corner during that time. Because there were some nights it was brutal. I mean, I come home, I'm gassed, I'm beat up, I'm sore, baby's crying. She's how it is. Your wife had 3 kids, so
Right.
she's tired. She's at her wits'
Right.
end. And she supported me, and I tried to help her out as much as I possibly could. We made it work, especially at the beginning. We're like, all right, I came home like around like 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
We had dinner, hung out with the baby. She would go to bed, and I would
Mhm.
stay up till midnight with her, with my daughter. And
Right.
then like, all right, feeding time. My daughter would come, and and then we'd trade places. I could get some
Right.
work done and go from
Right.
there. But you know, that was the support system that I had,
Yeah.
and that made another aspect a little challenging for me in the
Mhm.
academy. But again, my wife was a great support system.
Mhm.
And that was one thing that we could control compared to everything else. So it's just
Right.
another factor that I had to, go through.
So do you think the Dominic of the sophomore year at Brockport, how would that Dominic have done during police
Horrible.
academy training?
Horrible. I was, you know, I laugh. I don't like to toot my own horn.
Mhm.
I had a very good college career. I mean,
Mhm.
you know it as just as well as I know. I could have
Yeah.
post college continued throwing and excelled in who knows where I would have gone. Who knows?
Right. Right.
And I didn't. I stopped throwing after college.
Mhm.
But my sophomore Don Gonzalez thought I was the man. I thought
Mhm.
that I was untouchable and I could do anything. And man, was I just uh, I couldn't even say in words to be. I'm sure this is a very family friendly show, and I'd
No, you
tell.
could go ahead. That's fine.
Oh man, I was an asshole. I hate going back to what I was.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was an idiot. I thought I knew everything. I didn't know anything, and it was just bad.
Yeah.
I wish I could change what I was back then to what I know now. But
Mhm. No,
you know,
you were. No, go ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go. I was just ranting.
No, I was just gonna say, like, because I remember, like, not to not to call you a kid, but I was I'm 5 years older. I just turned 38. So back then it was like, because towards the tail end of your career, I think it was your junior senior year, that 2008-2009 season we threw at Allegheny. I don't know if you remember.
Allegheny.
We
Oh, I
traded,
remember Allegheny.
we traded the stadium record back and forth for
Yep.
a couple of rounds, but you always had this little, like, and Ed will, I think, would say the same thing. Like, you always had this little spark in your eye, and you could tell as a coach, like, the ones that have it and the ones that don't. And I'll be honest, a lot of kids that I've coached, they don't have that, like, I don't know, like, I think you still watch professional wrestling, and, like, they always talk about, like, that it factor, like,
Yep.
that thing, the intangible that you can't put your finger on, but like, you always had that, and I always admired that about you, even though you kicked my ass most of the time. And those drives home, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, I just lost to a college senior, I just lost to a junior, like, because it made me realize, like, what are you doing? Like, I had just been accepted into Fredonia's admin program, so I wanted to be an administrator.
Mhm.
And I'm driving around the Northeast, like, getting my ass kicked by a bunch of college kids, and it's like, maybe it's time to kind of start winding it down a little bit. But I just want to, in between that time, though, even though you kind of turned off the throwing piece, so you and Matt Hand started Strong and Far, which I always thought was really cool, and I think that was, like, the first time I reached out to you guys about
Mhm.
doing this. So can you talk a little bit about, like, how that came together, and if you have any, like, XL or double XL t-shirts left?
We have 0 t-shirts left. No, Matt and I started strongandfar.com because I always feel like, again, now looking back on things, we were ahead of the curve. There was, besides like elitefts.com and besides a couple other niche, like Iron Mind, a couple other small niche websites like that, there really wasn't much for amateur or up and coming athletes that want to excel.
Right.
A way for them to be known or be seen. Instagram wasn't even a thought back then. I think it just became popular. Like, it isn't, well, close to what it is now.
Right.
Twitter was the same thing as infancy. So we were just 2 kids that wanted to have a message board to show that there's guys like us that want to excel in our given fields and show what you could do. I mean, we were 9 to 5 guys. Matt worked, 3 crazy jobs. I worked crazy jobs between, personal training, coaching Geneseo, odd end jobs here and there, and still training and trying to do what we had to do. We wanted to make a soundboard for guys like us, not, the professionals, not, guys that, were already getting sponsorships and getting paid and this and that. We were just, and share information. That was the whole part of the website, was how can we be the in-between between guys wanting to get more information and know that there's regular just dudes out there. And we did well for a long time, but then I guess Matt got continued on the path, and then I fell off the path. What I mean by falling off the path is I stopped competing for, the placements for the professional. I was just now turning into, I just want to train to train. And I moved on. I was doing the whole bold thing. And so, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, traveling around in khakis and a polo, training like in the early mornings and not being able to blog or do stuff. And it was a lot on Matt. Matt did a lot of the stuff. I was kind of, I guess you call it the caboose on the train. But he continued on, and I kind of veered off that path. And that's kind of where, and look where he's at now. He's professional Highland Games. He's still competing. He's doing excellent for himself.
Right.
And where I'm, just on a different path of life. So, but
Well,
Strong and Far, that was the whole point of strongandfar.com, was just a message board for the average Joe who wanted to be more and do what they wanted to do in their strength field.
Well, I mean, you guys were definitely the originators. I mean, I remember you had a bunch of athletes that would post, and I would go all the time. I do kick myself, and I joke about the shirt thing because I can't tell you how many. I'm in my basement right now. I can't tell you how many bins I have under here of old college track shirts and all these like meat shirts and things like that. And that's the one that hopefully
I got away.
I got away. One day, hopefully, they show up on eBay or something. But yeah, I think a lot of that, and even like that's what I try and do with my website too, is to try and provide like information for people. Because I think I was talking to somebody about it earlier today, like the whole social media boom now. I think because people only post like the really highs, like the great performances or the great this or the great that. I think what you guys did and even what I'm trying to do, like it's okay that it's not every day isn't a great day. And when I was coaching at NAS with Lewis, like it was tough sometimes. Like I'm sure you felt the same way. I never threw as far as you guys ever, so let alone as trying to coach somebody who's a 20-meter thrower. And it was really difficult because with Instagram, like everyone's throwing far every day. It's like, coach,
right.
Like, I didn't throw 18 today. I didn't throw 19. I'm like, dude, nobody cares. Like, it's a random Tuesday afternoon practice. Like, it's not the end of the world. But I think it takes like a long time to like realize. I was talking to a mental performance coach about it, and she's like, yeah, it takes just as long to train your mind as it does, any other physical parts. But did you take any of that into consideration when you were coaching at Geneseo? Because I think I was coaching at NAS. It was like the first or second year I was at NAS and you were at Geneseo. So then like 12, 13. What was that experience like? Because I mean, we never touched base about it. I know we trained at Golds and did that, but like, because I remember a couple of meets that we just kind of crossed paths at the U of R, and I'll be honest, and for whoever who's going to watch this, I don't know, like one of my guilty pleasures has always been to wanting to be the throwing coach at Geneseo. And like for some, well, like I probably should have ended up there as an athlete, but that's a whole nother story. But I was like, God damn, like he's a freaking throwing coach at Geneseo. Like I wanted to be the throwing coach at Geneseo, and they have a great kid there now who's doing really well for himself. But what was that like transitioning from being a high level athlete? You're still powerlifting, you're crushing it, and now you're at a program where back then, it wasn't as deep as Brockport has ever been. Like talk a little bit about that. If what do you remember?
So what I remember about it was I was very excited. So Dave Pravasti was the assistant coach at the time, and I kind of reached out to him. He reached out to me. He actually reached out to Ed first. He was like, "Oh, do you think Don would ever be interested in coaching?" And I was at the time intern strength and conditioning coach at Monroe Community College.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, I don't know him and Han. You know what? Let's dabble in the coaching. Let's do it."
Right.
And he got me in, and we kind of figured out a way. And I'm really grateful for it, but at the same time, it was challenging because you got to remember, I was just graduated. So all these kids I just competed against, and they knew what I was capable of, and they knew the type of athlete that I was. And I'm not saying that I was a like you could say I was kind of a douchebag, but I would say that I was very confident and cocky, and I was
Right.
cutthroat. I was aggressive. When
Mhm.
I wanted to, especially my senior year, I
Mhm.
knew what I wanted, and you were either online with me or you're getting out of the way.
Right.
And not saying these kids weren't